Hi everyone.
Wait, we're not ready.
Oh. Hi everyone, I'm Miranda Rector. I'm the LGBTQ Women's Program Officer at the New Haven Pride Center. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, and as a queer woman and a survivor, I am so excited to welcome you all to the show for hashtag Art Against Violence, a campaign that we're working on to use art for advocacy purposes so that we can heal ourselves and our communities and use art as a form of expression to speak out against the violence that LGBTQ communities face in New Haven, in Connecticut, in the United States, and all across the globe. So thank you so much for joining us today. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce you all to our first piece, No Justice, No Peace. This beautiful print by the fabulous Luna Hikari, or Mark Anthony, is really stunning. We have a sort of diversity of figures here, holding up these protest signs, and I think it's a beautiful symbol of unity and strength. You know, this protest catchphrase has been in my head for the past several months, and it's definitely something that I think has been a guiding principle of a lot of this work. You know, really talking about how we have to actually put in the action and the effort into making sure that we bring, you know, peace to our society through a means of justice. And I just love the diversity of figures and representation here. We have some, you know, all entirely led by women of color who have been leading protests across the United States and across the globe for decades, and especially recently. You know, talking about issues of, you know, violence against Black transgender women, missing and murdered Indigenous women, violence against Muslim women, and so forth. And I think I was just talking to our lovely coworker, Ala, as we were putting up these amazing pieces, but the art is just so expressive. From the sort of tremendous sense of heartbreak and anger and rage that you can see in these eyes, and also the sense of determination. I like that they have a sort of variety of different expressions that you can see on their faces here. You know, that they're, you know, capturing that sort of multitude of emotions that comes through what is often a traumatizing and dehumanizing experience of violence, but that there is, you know, hope and the potential for action here. And I think that this piece is just, you know, so inspiring and something to, I think, you know, have in the back of your mind as you're going out to these protests and trying to take action. And I really think it captures the spirit of what we're going for in the Art Against Violence exhibit. So I'm very excited to begin with it. All right, next we have this amazing piece by the lovely 17-year-old Siobhan Ecka. She facilitated our first Art Against Violence workshop, Visualizing Better Futures. And at just 17 years old, she has managed to be such an amazing, amazing talent here. In this piece, we see two hands clasped together, holding together, you know, these sets of buildings on fire, you know, with chains adorned on them, and these ashes falling out. I think that's one of the details that I really wanted to point out here, is that there's, you know, ashes that are crumbling through. But for the most part, it's holding the building together as rain is slowly calming down. She does a really good point of, you know, highlighting intersectionality, the fact that we all come together with various identities to hold up, you know, a world that sometimes is both simultaneously burning and also being corrected, and also being rained upon and healed at the same time. So she uses various rings to highlight that. We have our pride flag, a trans pride flag, a sort of gender non-binary and gender fluid flag here to represent various gender identities. Rings sort of representing disability rights, and a very iconic Black Lives Matter fist raised. There's also very subtle details, and I hope you can see these on the camera, but these shadows of fists with, you know, protest signs and, you know, fists raised. And I like that this is, you know, coming down below, because it sort of highlights a sense of unity and the sense of community around these different identities. That we can all see ourselves in these hands, and it's not just one person, even though it's just a single figure here holding these hands together. And that we're all working together to kind of hold these up to, you know, break the chains off. It really reminded me of the line, "We have nothing to lose but our chains," and this piece is absolutely stunning in that regard. It's also just an amazing, amazing use of color. This contrast between the sort of, burning and the flames, which have such a brilliant texture as highlighted here, with this sort of, cold blues, which oftentimes represent sadness in a certain way. And then, with the hands sort of clasped, there is a sense of sadness there. But I think tying that together with the raindrops that are coming down, there's also a sense of healing and a sense of peace, and that sort of, cold colors. And I think it's a really, really impactful piece to look at. There's just so much more to analyze. So if you do want to come by, we'll have some reserved hours, and you can come see this piece in person, as well as all of the others, in small groups upon reservation shortly. So if you're local, highly encourage that. But definitely there's just so much more to analyze here. All right. And then next we have our lovely Latinx program officer, Max, who we discovered makes amazing, brilliant collages. So thank you, Max, for submitting to this. These pieces that he has submitted, and you'll see more of them during the show, are just so intimate and so personal, but also have this kind of sense of chaos to them. And I think that Max is able to brilliantly take, through the process of collage, images of sort of violence and destruction and chaos and humor, and rope them together and make them into something more peaceful, make them into a work of art that is, meaningful and inspiring. So we begin sort of our first vocal point, because it's such a large pop of color, is his own face. Sort of making this very goofy, chaotic expression through a selfie. And we move outwards to this sort of gorgeous watch. Incredibly expensive is one thing to note. It's a Louis Vuitton. But with these, different symbols around it of different flags representing different Latinx countries and cities around here. So really stunning sort of, the contrast there, the sense of sort of moving through time. There's so much more to analyze here, but just drawing through a couple of symbols, we have a gun, we have the sort of Nazi symbol and police, which makes a very bold and obvious statement. And we also have a lot of religious symbols coming through here. Sort of hands that are praying, the symbol for yin and yang, the sort of symbol of peace. We have a very sort of, ironic, cheeky Bill Murray prayer candle here, as well as the Bible indicated. And there's sort of the sense of, chaos and breaking free, and being centered and acted upon in a society that throughout time has, caused sort of the sense of turmoil through religious power structures, through police forces, even through the Nazi Party, that are incredibly violent, and cause a sort of sense of chaos and conflict. I think this image is also really interesting, the kind of boxing gloves that have the United States, the sense of sort of fighting against each other, and kind of being at war with yourself. A sort of self-destructive and chaotic nature is very present here. All right. So these two pieces were designed by a young graphic artist, Chris Chu. He whipped them up, if I remember correctly, during our Art Against Violence workshops, because he is talented and incredibly efficient, and then submitted them right away. So this piece says spoils the whole bunch, and this piece you have, one kind of rotten apple in the whole barrel. He was making a commentary on, police violence and police brutality, and sort of recognizing that, there's this, a lot of debates is okay, well, what about good police officers, or, are all cops bad, and so on and so forth. And he wanted to make the statement that, using that kind of cliche phrase, that idiom, one bad apple spoils the barrel, that, because of the presence of violence against, everyday people by police forces, particularly Black and Indigenous folks, that it does, in fact, spoil the whole bunch, and sort of making a very sort of bold statement against police forces as a whole, using this kind of cheeky, cartoony, and very kind of catchy graphic design. You can definitely check out his website. It's fantastic. Just bright pink colors, really beautiful. And there's just a lot, it's a very sort of eye-catching message. This piece is just really beautiful. I really, really love, this is also by Mark Anthony. They submitted various graphic designs and prints and digital art for the show. And you can purchase some of them and hang them up on your wall. Absolutely stunning. So for this piece, I just think it's just a gorgeous, powerful portrait of, a Black femme who, is just sort of standing in all of her power and all of her glory here. It's just so full and lush. As we saw with the other piece, the facial expressions, there's so much emotion in the eyes, the sense of, real power and determination and fierceness that is coming through in this. And it just really sort of demonstrates a lot of pride in Black womanhood and being a Black femme. And it's just a very sort of, bold and healing piece. There's another piece on the show that I want to compare this with, because I think they're both making a very similar message about, taking pride in Black beauty and Black womanhood, and it's just absolutely stunning. You could just stare at this face for hours. She's gorgeous. Yeah. So unfortunately, due to delays in the U.S. Postal Service that we are all talking about, alas, this piece made it into the mail a little bit late. Is by the lovely Charlotte, Charlotte Van
Yay, Charlotte!
Voorhis? JC would know since...
Charlotte, our wonderful intern, yay!
Yeah, we love
Hashtag
Charlotte.
save USPS.
Yeah. Also attended our workshop and made a very beautiful piece about her bisexual identity and coming to terms, with her bisexuality. I got to view the piece briefly on my computer. Absolutely stunning, gorgeous work.
And we will be putting it up on Facebook once it arrives.
Yes. So you will be able to see it. You also will be able to see Charlotte at our panel on Saturday. So
Yay,
come
Charlotte.
for a talk back with our artists, facilitated by myself and by Luciana McClure of Nasty Women, Connecticut. So absolutely amazing. You will be able to see it soon. All right. We have another one of Mark's pieces. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love Avatar: The Last Airbender. And apparently, there are a couple of audiobooks that have come out about this particular Avatar Kyoshi, with the caption, "Only justice will bring peace," which I do believe is one of her quotes from the show. She's an interesting character to make this art around, since she is sort of, one of the actually more kind of violent and forceful avatars that we know of. She started 2 groups and takes part in one of them, the Kyoshi Warriors. This group, I'm just being super nerdy right now. But this group was started to sort of train women in self-defense against the men of the town and in the Earth Kingdom. And so she's, talking about, domestic violence and things of that nature, and it's super badass. But she also lives with a lot of regret over starting a police force that, as you go forward, is super corrupt. And I think it's an interesting character to have here, as we talk about what justice is and what justice against violence means, and how that impacts things. All right. We love throwing bricks. all the Black and brown trans women that threw bricks at Stonewall. This is a piece by Ricky Maestri.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. I believe he made this piece live during one of our fundraisers.
Yeah, he did it live during our Night of Resilience in June.
Yes.
And I'm just putting it out there. You can't buy this one. It's already in the private collection of Juan Carlos Soto.
So you can't have it. That's what I'm saying.
It belongs to someone else who is generously loaning it to us today.
I've always wanted to be like one of those art connoisseurs that would lend art pieces, and this is my moment.
Yes. Living your best bougie life.
Yes.
But absolutely just, stunning. And I think we, as we were talking about, it's a good contrast in theme with the last piece as we discussed, as we're talking about the need to bring justice in order to bring peace. And the fact that we actually need to take action sometimes. But also thinking through, the consequences of our actions. Of course, Kyoshi tried to do it through bringing order and actually creating a system of power and balance. I think we need to think about how we fight against those systems and fight against that corruption and those, systemic abuses of power, systemic racism, systemic transphobia that are impacting our society.
And shout out to Tiana Maxim Rose, who was the model for this piece, who is one of our local trans drag performers.
Ooh, amazing. All right. So this piece, there's another piece that we discussed in the workshop by Greg Deal, which is a giant mural, and it's very similar to this. But the piece simply says, "Stop killing us." I think it's sort of an incredibly beautiful piece honoring the many missing and murdered Indigenous women and queer folks and two-spirits that are, killed and go missing each year. There's such determination and resilience in this figure's eyes. And I think that's it's really profound to me that, given the sort of nature of the situation and given the nature of violence and things like that, the ability to make this bold statement and to keep fighting. The word that comes to mind with this piece is just resilience and hope. And I think that's what we all need to remember to practice, that, we do need to take those moments to let ourselves grieve and to let ourselves practice self-care. But, just looking into this young figure's eyes and just seeing their sense of hope and resilience, I think it's just so important to keep in mind that, we need to keep going, especially those of us that are more privileged than the people at stake. Women like this who are incredibly at risk are fighting every single day, and anyone who is more privileged needs to recognize the privileges and call them out and lend their voices and give up their power to amazing people like this. So.
And who did this piece?
This piece is also by Mark Anthony. Or Luna.
Just wanted to make sure we said their name.
Yes. I thought I already had, but yeah, you can kind of tell there's, strong sense of style and voice in Luna's pieces. The ability to use figures, of these, amazing women to just capture a message. This piece is by Marina Yoshimura, who didn't submit her bio for this, but I can tell you a lot about her as someone who personally kind of saved my life, honestly, when I was at a really bad place. She openly identifies as a survivor as well, and she's the reason I sought help and care and was able to reflect and begin that process of healing. We sort of lived together for a couple of months in the summer in a very chaotic, messy situation. But, I think this piece, there's a lot going on in here, but that sort of, things all being interconnected, that, path towards healing being sort of non-linear, the path towards having a sort of a broken to a full heart, a heart that's at peace. The sort of like sense of a lantern falling down, a building / briefcase that's almost on its side. It's, there's a sense of chaos. But I think as we're talking about healing ourselves from violence and, being survivors of violence, especially in the LGBTQ community and communities at large, there's something we have to sort of like recognize is that, the process of healing is cyclical, it's nonlinear, and it's complicated and it's messy, and that's okay. And I think that really comes through in this really gorgeous, hand-drawn marker and ink piece. And as a survivor, this really spoke to me of that kind of, it doesn't have to be okay all at once.
Both at the same time.
These are stunning. They are by Bubbles, who is just an icon in the queer community, a legend. There's just so much to be said about her. Just beautiful, bold, badass human being who has done so much for the trans community in New Haven, and just for the LGBTQ community at large and the arts community here, and is just an amazing figure and so.
And just joined the board of the New Haven Pride Center.
I was not aware of that. Thank you.
Yes, as of yesterday.
Just as of yesterday.
Oh my God. Well, we love Bubbles. I walked in here and today was the first time I got to see these pieces. And was just, my jaw dropped. Behind the mask, if you can see it. But the fact that this is done in Sharpie, while she was in the hospital using the trays that she got for meals. So this is, Sharpie on styrofoam, and she's able to, stipple just with all of these little dots, if you come closer, to make just amazing works of art that really are captured. And I think that, these pieces are stunning and gorgeous, and they have such lovely meanings on their own. This one is where she just really gets to name herself, and to make this figure of herself, and to sort of embrace who she is and her identity and be like, this is me, I am Bubbles. And this fierce pair of eyes of, I think a cheetah, a leopard, or a lion, some type of animal, that sort of like bold, striking, ferocity, that intensity towards, survival and things of that nature. We have a couple of more of these pieces coming up, so I won't spend too much more time on them.
Messy office.
Yes, and more pieces by Max, who I don't know if I mentioned, this is also going to be on Saturday's panel, so come check it out. This piece, the first one, Max openly identifies as HIV positive, and, I think when we talk about violence, we don't often talk about the structural violence or violence within healthcare and with medicine. And, there's just a tremendous sense of, history that comes through here, through, the Keith Haring projects, through sort of a much more modern, like, HIV Stigma Sucks, this very sort of like sweet, endearing photo. All of these things of, people across generations who have really, fought against the structural violence that has impacted and caused harm to so many people with HIV. And while the other piece sort of used kind of violent and chaotic and almost humorous pieces and images thrown together to sort of, make peace of existing violence, this piece I think is really about that journey and the beauty of self-acceptance, of, sometimes the traumatic and hard work, of these, needles and the dart of having to, take medications and things like that, the expense of it, but also this sort of, sense of love and hope and sense of community that emerged, in an ongoing HIV epidemic and AIDS crisis. Another one of Mac's pieces, So I've been like looking at this one. I'm still trying to figure out, what to make of it. So bear with me. I'm not a
I
professional
love this
art
part.
historian.
This is my favorite part.
Yeah, I think that sort of, this kind of falls into the category. We have more of that where the wild things are imagery. This time from the movie, we had a clipping from the children's book. And I love the sort of like taking of cartoons and chaos. We have some more of the religious imagery here, but also images of, sort of like rolled up dollars and a cigarette back, virus kind of bacteria, these bombs, all sorts of things that are sort of like terrifying and chaotic, like demons and, taking a child away. And I think that, along with this, there's just sort of the sense of, again, that like chaos of violence, but kind of coming together and trying to find the order within it, and trying to sort of like make peace with it. So it's definitely one of those pieces that I'd want to stare at for a longer period of time and analyze. So again, come by the Pride Center, reserve a time.
If you go to newhavenpridecenter.org, you can reserve a time to see this exhibit in person.
Yes. All right. Woo! This beautiful giant piece has already been sold. It was sold before the exhibit opened. Jay is such an amazing talent, and there's so much to be said about everything in this piece, from the texture of the white and this crumpledness that like almost looks like a natural and organic, like a flower, to the sort of use of color. And I think this is a piece that is really centered on the theme of healing from violence. There's sort of almost something kind of chaotic and visceral about these, roses erupting from this woman's back like wings. And sort of as they kind of reach to the sky and, pose in this sort of like yoga-like position. And I think it's just a really beautiful piece to kind of capture that sense of growth and healing. And sometimes that explosive and radical change that brings us to the sense of peace, and peace with ourselves, and sense of healing. When we were first coming up with this exhibit, I really wanted Jay to submit a few pieces, and I think this is so perfect, and it really, really is on theme. We have another one of Bubbles' pieces here. I'm going to ask our cameras get nice and close because you need to see the level of detail. Each of these scales is created by all of these tiny little dots. And, Bubbles is a true-to-life mermaid. And I think it's just, as she was in the hospital and dealing with a lot of tremendous pain and against, the violence that happens sometimes against our bodies and ourselves, the fact that she was able to take that experience and, make this beautiful kind of, I think it's a self-portrait, honestly, because this is true to her spirit and to who she is, of this mermaid, and to have this sort of sense of power and beauty in this experience is really perfect.
Let me do a wide shot.
Amazing, yeah. So more Bubbles pieces hung here. There's a tremendous sense of joy here. I believe, Patrick, she told you a little bit more about the process behind these, so I'm going to let you chime in here.
So as Miranda mentioned, Bubbles, or Tia Lynn, was in the hospital, and she made these over a course of, multiple days. I think it might have even been multiple stays. For example, this piece was inspired by one of the nurses that took care of her. In some of these other images were other folks that she saw or met while she was in the hospital and or visited her. These pieces, as Miranda mentioned, were done directly on the styrofoam. See, you can see styrofoam on trays that they give you at the hospital. And so while kind of Bubbles was taking the pain and the violence of having to be in the hospital to create these beautiful pieces of art, kind of literally one dot at a time. I'm just going to do a little zoomy zoom. So yeah, these are awesome.
Amazing. Thank you for the extra info. All right. One more piece by Jay, and again, just this use of color. Well, the green piece was a very peaceful kind of sense of, emerging towards healing through this kind of like radical interchange. When I look at this one, I think there's so much more sadness and grief almost in the expression here. And yet it's sort of giving way to this ability to kind of, to fly, to emerge, to grow, and to sort of, grow this like sense of flower and rose. And I think it's still absolutely stunning, and still captures that theme of, the difficulty, the sort of chaotic, energetic and dynamic nature of healing and inner healing, while having this sort of solitary, still figure that's still having to, work through that sense of grief and that sense of sadness. And I think the color really advances that story and that narrative of healing and growth, of coming from the sort of, black and white image and emerging into sort of a sense of color, and a sense of spirit and a sense of true self. And the takeaway that I want everyone to have from this exhibit overall is that, if you are currently working through a process of healing, we're all here for you, and it is okay to kind of embrace those sort of sad, kind of negative feelings, and also know and trust in the fact that it's a process and it's a journey and it's a long one, and that you will come through to the other side, and you deserve to have someone who, sees you in all of this beauty and all of this glory, and you will. And everyone here at the Pride Center is going to see you that way. All right. And finally, I think it's only fitting to have Kiki talk about Kiki.
So,
say a few words of, super powerful images, but I would like Kiki to take over.
So everyone, these photographs are by Megan, who is a phenomenal photographer. She does a lot of photography for us here at the New Haven Pride Center, photographs many of our events. So you've probably seen her around. These are all photos of drag performer Kiki Lucia. And these are part of the step down performance from Connecticut Coronation. And this performance, which was done to the song Survivor, but a kind of slow, eerie version, was really inspired by this idea of taking kind of the words that people throw at us and make them their own, and know that, yes, they may burn into your skin, but you are stronger and you're a survivor, and you can beat all odds, so to speak. And this was actually the final moment of that performance, with the fist in the air, defying the hate and the meanness.
Awesome. All right, we have 4 more pieces.
Don't get sorry if you got a little seasick when we did that.
So these are also by Bubbles, and I love how you can tell, even though it's a very different medium, who the artist was, because of
I'm
that
just
stippling
gonna do
effect.
that.
I was having a really hard time getting this one to not be crooked. It was getting at me. Anyways, so I love this sort of, we hung them kind of family portrait style, the way you would expect it around a home. And I think, as we're talking about the topic of healing and embracing who you are, this idea of, having this portraiture that's sort of very, spiritual and reflective of an inner self. And I think that finding that strength in who you are and who you can be. And it's just this gorgeous, style that she's developed, a tremendous use of texture and color, and layers and building to really create this sort of, magical look at, this, sense of, kind of finding her inner spirit and her inner fierceness and the ability to fight back. It's just really beautiful. And then finally, we're going to end with pieces by another 17-year-old artist. The youth are killing it. This one is by Jewel Booker, a local New Haven high school student, I believe a senior. Absolutely amazing, and participated in our workshop led by 17-year-old artist in Connecticut, Siobhan. And just so lucky and privileged to get to know both of them. So I'll start with Black is Beautiful, which, similar to Melanin by Mark Anthony, has a kind of similar message here, but that just sort of embracing of identity. And I think we've kind of repeated this theme over and over again of finding beauty in who you are and using that to heal, and that sometimes the best way to fight back against violence is to not let it get to you, but to sort of reclaim who you are. She did make a note of it, and remember, of wanting this to look almost like caution tape, like I dare you to sort of like challenge this idea, and this sort of flower sticking out of the tongue. That kind of sense of magical realism to this piece, that is very much an identity of her sense of beauty and sense of self, and her embracing of her Blackness. And then finally, this one which talks about some of the sort of violent comments that she's received as someone who's mixed, but also an embracing of the beauty of her roots and who she is. So she talks about family, Black movies, getting her hair done, Italian restaurants, Puerto Rican Black and Italian food, all of these things that make up who she is, and sort of how these are her roots that keep her grounded, as she has to sometimes respond to these comments. No, I don't speak Spanish or Italian. I'm still, Puerto Rican and I'm still Italian. Or I'm never going to pick one side of my races to be. And, it's even something is sort of like, yes, I do get sunburned. Taking control of who she is. And sort of this, brilliant response. And it's really beautifully able to capture that sense of, there's an outside of what you have to express to the world and sometimes defend yourself to the world. And there's this inner side of these roots that make her who she is. And it's called a mixed tree. And I do love that she makes it very much look like, human and figural. And I really appreciate the sense of, magical realism that she brings to these works of art.
And so I'm going to jump in here and say thank you to Miranda for hosting this. Miranda is the co-curator of this exhibit with me, Patrick Dunn. And this exhibit, which is called Art Against Violence, #, will be up until the mid-September, right before we do Pride New Haven. Woo! This exhibit's works, it featured 9 different artists. 10 different artists,
10, yeah.
And is available for viewing if you go to newhavenpridecenter.org. As Miranda mentioned, most of these works are for sale. So if you are interested in purchasing any of them, you can contact info@newhavenpridecenter.org. That's Laura Bocadora's email.
That's me.
And finally, we would like to say a special thank you and shout out to our amazing funders who made this exhibit possible. Hi, JC. Hi, Ella. Who made this exhibit possible, which include the Arts Council of Greater New Haven, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and the City of New Haven's Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism. So thanks, everybody.
Thank our partners on this. BH Care and Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Nassing Women Connecticut.
Yay!
For joining with us to inspire and inform this exhibit and our fight against violence using art.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Bye.